Hey guys, welcome back. This week's episode, we're getting tactical.
We're talking tactics and technique for targeting steelhead.
Hey guys, I'm Josh Trammell.
Dustin White.
We're gonna continue our tactical episode here. We're gonna break down these techniques that we use throughout our fisheries here in Steelhead Alley. We're gonna break it down into three different sections. We've got nymphing, we've got stripping streamers, and we've got swinging streamers. Dustin, out of those three, what do you think is the most commonly used and most effective for our area year-round?
Hands down, it's nymphing. Now, that can be broken down into three different categories itself, but by and large, it is the most effective way, like with any trout fishing, to elicit eats from these fish. Now, with those three categories, Josh, what would we be looking at that would fit under that broad umbrella of nymphing?
Right, so we've got a couple different categories, like subcategories. We've got dry dropper rigs, which commonly we would use these in the early season, like the early fall, maybe even later in the fall. It's a low water presentation. So when we have the dry droppers, we are using a chubby Chernobyl, a hopper, typically something with foam that's gonna float well, and we're using a nymph, a small egg below that. That is a much softer presentation, less likely to spook fish in super low, clear, calm conditions. What will be next? What will be another technique that we use in more prime condition, Dustin?
Definitely fishing with an indicator probably is the most effective and most popular in what you would call prime conditions. And so in that sort of system, we're using a dead drift with a fly or a couple flies suspended beneath an indicator with some split shot helping them get down to depth. And we want a nice dead drift, natural presentation to those fish as those flies drift down the river. But there's still a third category, Josh. What would that be?
Yep, we can also do this without an indicator as well. We can simply use that same rig that we were using under an indicator and just lose the bobber indicator, excuse me. And then, we can use the line to detect strikes. So typically we would use this for shorter casts, shorter drifts, whereas the indicator might be used when we are trying to get further out from ourselves, further out from the boat, when mending comes into play, when we have higher water, that kind of stuff that is less likely, like the fish are more comfortable when we can get away with that tight.
Yeah, that tight lining rig I tend to find is very, very effective if you're trying to target fish that are maybe next to some structure that you might get hung up in, a log jam per se. If you know fish are holding really tight to the bottom and you want to be in that close proximity to them, that's where that's really going to come into play for you. Josh, what's another technique beyond nymphing that is effective for our steelhead here on the alley?
Let's talk about stripping streamers.
Love it.
Typically, for most of us, it is primarily a low water technique. When we get low water on our streams, we have very low flow as well. The CFS, the cubic feet per second of our rivers, slows down greatly to where we can't very effectively get a drift. So these fish, when they start to pool up, they get in these larger schools and stuff like that, and sometimes they may be very willing to chase a strip streamer. Typically, we're moving it pretty quickly.
Yep.
We're not getting super far underneath the surface. Usually, we can see these fish that we're targeting with these streamers. Smaller stuff like just woolly bugger imitations, things like that. You could use anything like a dungeon or a circus peanut. There's a whole wide variety. If we were to say have a little higher water, a little bit more off color, would you still strip streamers, Dustin? And how would you do that?
Definitely, if you want to, you're just going to want to use a full intermediate line or a sinking line to get down to depth in front of those fish. Obviously, this is a really, really fun way to target our fish, but there's still a third way that we can use to target our steelhead, and that is, of course, swinging flies. Josh, what's the setup we typically use when we're swinging flies for steelhead?
I'd say most of us like to use the two-handed rods. These can be switch rods, these can be shorter spey rods, they can be you know, a full spay rod as well. Typically what I choose is that short spay kind of switch rod category. It can also be done on a single hand rod as well.
That's right, but you want a lateral presentation. You're casting that fly at a downstream angle and you're swinging it across the run, working up to down through where you are identifying fish to likely be holding at. And it's often a very popular way, very fun way to target a fish. And all three of these are just a delight to dive into, and we can't wait to talk to you more about that as we progress through this series on steelheading. As we reminded before, we want to encourage you to check out Steelheading Made Simple. You can check it out here or down in the description.
And for now, like this video, subscribe to stay up to date on the next ones, and we will
See you then.
next time.